All right.
What? I wanted to hear the music, man.
I know, dude. I want to put it back on. I like that music. I actually like the little beat, little Juice WRLD beat. All right, everybody. Welcome to Striking Gold, 49ers podcast and YouTube channel from the Blue Wire Network. My name is Rob Lowder. That's KP Kyle Posey. And we are here to break down the final tally, the final showdown. It's the final of the 49ers 2026 draft class. Now, could they throw out a random Brandon Ayuk and have one more pick? Maybe. Highly doubt it. But I guess we got to look out for it. But as of now, the 49ers draft class is complete with 8 players. I will rattle them off for you. Let me get over to the comment section here. So make sure we see stuff.
You're not speaking that into existence. The draft is over.
I apologize. Okay. So first pick in the second round, wide receiver Deshawn Stribbling. Third round, defensive end Romelo Height. Third round, also running back Kaylin Black. And then in the fourth round, you've got defensive tackle Grayson Halton. And then you've got offensive guard, offensive tackle Carver Willis out of Washington. Cornerback, also out of Washington, Ephesians Pryock. Jack Marius, Tack Theratric's cousin. And then you've got Jaden Duggar, linebacker out of Louisiana. And then at the very last one, their very last pick, towards the end of the fifth round, is Enrique Cruz, tackle. I think he's a bona fide tackle. They all seem like they're tackles until they're not in the pros. Out of Kansas. So
played both sides, played a little right, a little left.
Seems like an athlete. He had a 9.99 score, RAS score, relative athletic score. Looking across the board when it comes to athletic scores, every single player the 49ers picked was in the greens, except for the old Carver Willis out of Washington, he played tackle there and has talked about going down to guard and has even talked about possibly playing center. So there's some unknowns there, but that's what the 49ers need. They needed an interior guy. What was your KP? What's your first reaction, man?
My first reaction is people have strong feelings about players that they have not watched based on what other people think about said players, despite the history of these other people being consistently wrong about said players that they evaluate. That's what I learned this weekend. I've been getting cussed out left and right on Twitter just for sharing my opinions. And let's take D Winners, for example. On one end, I was like, all right, well, this is what they got, and this is why they did that. And then I was wrong there. And I came back and said, I actually like D Winners. And then I was also wrong there because another faction of the fan base was just talking about how, he misses all these tackles and he does this. So I guess I learned this weekend that the opinions are quite strong in April about players.
Well, the funniest part about all this is that people will be genuinely upset about your opinion of a player. They will be angry. They will be mad. It's just football. We're not even related to these people. They're just players. And, we got to make snap judgments based on when they pick them. And especially in my case, most of those judgments are made off of going off the information that other people have given me. They're not even my opinions. There's only probably a handful, maybe a dozen prospects in this draft class that I felt like I watched enough to stand on the table for them. Yeah. If John Lynch let me come into the draft room, there was only a few guys that I'd feel comfortable walking in to face off with John Lynch and Kyle Shanahan and tell them why they should pick a guy. And even then, my breadth of knowledge would be significantly less than theirs. So I'm not excusing them, but it is funny sometimes.
So Stribbling is another example. So I had Stribbling as wide receiver 6. Guess how many wide receivers were drafted in the first round, Rob?
How many?
5. So in the second round, when the 49ers took a wide receiver, they took the 6th wide receiver in the NFL draft. In my mind, based on how I watch these players, that is a great time to take a wide receiver if you feel like that wide receiver is in that same range. So Stribbling, we talked about it a little bit yesterday, but he was rising up boards.
Yeah, let's start there. Let's work our way through the picks specifically.
Yeah, so he was rising up draft boards and whatnot. But again, if I'm going to evaluate somebody differently than you are going to evaluate somebody differently, that a draft analysis that probably you only watched a few games this last year. So there are so many different things that go into this. So using even the consensus board, I would love to know how many people truly watched Deshawn Stribbling, or how many people are so caught up in rankings of other people and they're so afraid to go against the grain. And that's just something that I've never been able to, or never had an issue with. So when I say Stribbling, when I say Chris Bell, these players are better than even the first rounders. That's just based off not watching anybody else's big board, but simply going off what I see. So it's easy for me in my mind to come up with selecting him at 33, for example. And the argument against it is, well, that you could have gotten him a couple rounds later. How do you know that? How do you know that? So Grayson Halton is another good example. That is a player who many people had going in the second round for a long time. I was talking to some of the guys that I work with. They said they were considering him in the 50s when they were on the clock. So I haven't heard like the counter argument to that, right? So Halton was a guy that the draft community seemed pretty high on, but he was available on Saturday. But back to Stribbling, I can't come away saying it's a bad pick because I like the player. So for me, that's an easy B+, B. And again, if you thought that he was 6, 7, 8, and you understand that there's going to be a wide receiver run, why even mess with it? Why risk trading back? Why risk doing anything else as opposed to just taking the player you got? This is a perceived weak draft, and there are not those we talked about. There are not those upper tier type of players. So just take a good one. Take somebody who you think complements what you do well. And I think Stribbling does that very, very well, man. Again, like watch Seattle. Watch. There was even a little bit of issues in the Colts game where the wide receivers just getting punked. They're getting bullied. Stribbling, that's not what he's going to do, man. So he's going to be able to run away. He's going to be able to win through contact. He's going to be able to do all the things you need to do to help your run game going too. So pretty big fan of that one. Have you watched any of the guys today that they selected at all? Like I only watched
just very, very minimal, like as much as I could fit in, between the draft and hanging out with the little guy. I couldn't just kind of boot everybody to the wayside and watch every prospect, but we'll have to do deeper dives into these guys. This is kind of our instant snap reaction.
Right.
My biggest pushback would be, and it's still not something I'm passionate about. I'm not upset about any of these picks. Some of them kind of made me chuckle, but with the 49ers, we have some pretty demonstrable evidence at this point that they like to go against the grain, that they like to pick players that aren't anywhere near consensus. And then when you look at that list, which I should have brought up, I've got it on my phone. I should have brought it up on the computer, but this will be another podcast in and of itself. They've got there's a chart that shows that the 49ers reach for draft picks more than any other team in the NFL based on pulling away from that, that where that pick was made against the consensus. And then if you look at their top 20 reaches from 2017 all the way to 25, it's basically a who's who of didn't work out. Mitch Wisnowski, running back Tyrion Davis-Price, running back Joe Williams, quarterback Sam Womack, quarterback Trey Lance, quarterback C.J. Beathard, linebacker Nick Martin, offensive lineman Aaron Banks. There's some exceptions in here, but kicker Jake Moody, tackle Justin Scholes, safety Marcel Harris, wide receiver Jordan Watkins, wide receiver Jalen Hurd, wide receiver Dante Pettis. Given the 49ers history of reaching and the history that very, very, very few of those players that they've reached for have ever worked out. Now, there's also overhanging all of that is the fact that the odds, depending on where this player was taken, that a draft pick works out are against them anyways, so you're dealing with that as well. It's not just the fact that they reached that's not what I'm trying to say is the fact that they reach isn't the only reason that player didn't work out. There's, depending on where you're picking a player, the odds are against them anyways. So given that, and then when we start seeing these picks and, the 49ers start consistently reaching again, some of the players that the 49ers took today per SF Data Niners were some of their biggest reaches like ever. Now, again, we're late in the back end. Linebacker Jaden Duggar was like a plus 148. Even Deshawn Stribbling plus 58. And that's kind of more based on location. A plus 58 at pick 33. That means that at least per the consensus, that player should have been taken somewhere in round 3. But again, everybody's got a different board. I'm not going to act like that's going to define these players. When it comes to Deshawn Stribbling, we'll start working through them. There's a lot to like, man. I mean, 6'2", over 200 pounds, a very, very physical receiver. Eric Crocker did a pretty good breakdown today. Even you had a good clip of him today and what he does. The part that I struggle with, and the part that I'm going to have to work past when it comes to Deshawn Stribbling, after seeing what he's great at, it feels very much like the 49ers were like, we lost Juwan Jennings. He was a great blocker on the perimeter. Let's just get the best blocking receiver. And it's you hope it's not that simple. That would be silly. That'd be a silly reason to take a receiver because obviously what you're asked to do. He does a lot of other things, man. Good after the catch. He's very physical. He's extremely physical in the run game. He can break tackles. Not a great route runner, but has good hands. So if you can improve the route running, you can have a much, much better player than obviously the consensus ever thought of him. So, to me, if I can get past the fact that it just looked like the 49ers just straight up tried to replace what Jauan Jennings does in the run game, then we'll go from there. But I know, again, you were a Deshawn Stribbling guy, so feel free to let me know why it's more than that.
Yeah, no, and I 100% understand where people are coming from, just because when we're talking about these top 50 wide receivers, like he was never mentioned among them. Later on in the process, we were talking maybe he'd sneak into the end of the second round, but we were hung up on like the Denzel Bostons, the KC Concepcion, Concepcion, Omar Cooper Jr.'s. So the names that we talked about for months and months and months, they were available. And the 49ers, we knew that they were going to take a wide receiver. So the 49ers trading out of the wide receiver, the picks where we thought that they would select a wide receiver was probably just confusing for a lot of people. I thought it was telling that they did not want, like the 49ers and the Bills, did not want to take Omar Cooper. They traded out of the pick when he was available. And the one team who took him was the New York Football Jets. So I think that tells you what the NFL thinks about that player. I would say, here's how I would narrow it down for Stribbling. Okay, so if he's going to play this Jauan Jennings role, and if this is too early for Jauan Jennings, who, mind you, Shanahan nearly got 1,000 yards out of a 7th-round wide receiver in this same role, who's
all he had to do was not get in one more fight.
yeah, man. He was going to get that probably on the next series if he would have stayed in.
Right.
So he's going to play that Jauan Jennings role. He's going to play the slot. You talked about not being a great route runner. Would you say Jauan Jennings is a great route runner?
No. Well, he was a decent route runner for making the best of his physical abilities. You know what I mean?
Sure.
Like,
for sure.
So it wasn't anything. He had gotten as much juice out of his own frame as he could get, is what I would say.
Yeah, I would agree. So in the same breath, I think if you're dropping Stribbling into that Jauan Jennings role, you're able to kind of elaborate on the route tree, right? So you can go from just running outs, like in cuts, return routes, to now you can maybe run more posts. We saw that a little bit in the playoffs where they were starting to use him downfield. Now you can maybe run more isolation routes where he can run out-breaking routes, which is not really what Jauan Jennings did. So I think you can expand on what he did on that route tree. And then, of course, you're going to have the same the blocking tendencies, the big guy able to block linebackers in condensed splits. But you add a speed element, and that really helps. So even when you get back to those crossers, he's going to be able to pull away from guys in ways that Jennings just simply could because physically he couldn't.
Right. That's probably the biggest intriguing element from him. I mean, it happened one time, and of course everybody's going to post that clip, but you have that a simple 5-yard hitch that he houses against a Georgia defense, and Kyle Shanahan's going to take advantage of that. And you also have got a guy that it's not just the speed. He's a little bit of a bully, and there's a little bit of that, like what we liked in Chris Bell. There's a little bit of that in Deshawn Stribbling, and just the fact that they like to throw their weight around. They like to play physical. He just needs to start harnessing his speed a little bit more. You can tell that he has played DBs in college that respected his speed, that sure, accounted for it. He could get guys to turn and run pretty quick at times. And it's, to me, when I was watching what Crocker was posting, there were times where it was almost like he was trying to do too much. Like he was trying to do a little pitter patter at the line. Then he would do like a little pitter patter before his break. And I think probably one of the things that he'll benefit most from probably NFL coaching is just less wasted movement, man. If you want to give a little inside fake, that's fine, but give him one foot and then go and make that DB think that your speed is threatening them in that moment.
Sure. No, I would agree. Like there were times where you could tell he didn't know how to dress up his routes, right? Like he didn't know how to. Who's a good example? Brandon Ayuk. Let's use him. Brandon Ayuk as a route runner is just exceptional.
Too soon.
At deception, at setting up his routes, at using different type of head fakes to give you an idea that he's going somewhere when in reality he's going in the opposite direction. But I think going back to like the Jauan Jennings role, like he's not going to have to do those things. you have Mike Evans, you have Ricky Pearsall, you have Christian Kirk. So he's going to be dropped into a role, I'm thinking, at least early on, where he can either just rely on his speed to run away from guys or just, isolation routes after the catch where the scheme is going to get you open. So in that sense, I agree with a lot of what you said, actually. So it's not like I don't want to seem like he's a perfect prospect. Of course, he's not a perfect prospect. So
if he was a perfect prospect at that size, he would have been long gone.
Right. Saleh would have taken him at 4.
Right. There's a Warren Sharp put out a tweet that says, "Reporter, John, could you possibly have even an average draft one time and stop reaching on almost every pick every year?" And it's John Lynch, and it's that clip of Saban. I'm not going to do it, so stop asking me.
I love that.
There's a lot to like, man. Kyle Shanahan, you're a wide receiver guy. Coach him up. There's things he can learn. I like where you're starting. Like if you gave me a choice of like a receiver that was a great route runner but didn't have the toughness, didn't have the size, didn't have the hands, I think Deshawn Stribbling's a great place to start. Route running might be one of the more coachable, teachable things about a receiver can learn. You can study it, you can mold it. It's not like hand-eye coordination. If you struggle catching the ball and it's clear that you just don't have the right technique and you don't have the right reaction skills and it just looks awkward for you. We say that all the time. You see receivers that have played receiver for a long time but still just don't quite look comfortable catching the ball. That stuff you can't really coach out of them. You can practice it as much as you want, but your coordination is your coordination.
Do you know how many hours you're going to have to practice to have Casey Concepcion's hands go from like here to here or from here? Like, that's very tough to be able to teach somebody to track the ball with your eyes and catch the X is what I would always tell guys.
Right.
Catch the X, just watch it all the way in. So like, you don't have to worry about it. You can watch Stribbling. You see those oven mitts he has for hands. Like, that's going to matter.
And inch hands.
Yeah, that's
10-inch hands. That's crazy. It's almost the size of a piece of paper. Okay, let's move on. Do you have anything else for Deshawn Stribbling?
No,
no. We have plenty of time to get into him. The next pick that they made was let me get my tweet with the whole draft class in there because I want to make sure I remember the number in which they made the exact picks. That was a weird sound. Okay, so at 70. Now, here's the other thing too. And I don't know if I want to get into this right now. I kind of do. Like, it was very easy to kind of shadow this draft with who I would have picked in my own, who I would have chose at the moment. And this pick is an interesting one because defensive end Romelo Height was taken at pick 70. They traded back from 58 to 70. And with that pick that they traded to the Browns, safety Emmanuel McNeil-Warren was taken. And what's interesting about this draft is I know who my first 3 picks would have been. We talked about them live. I would have gone defensive end Cassius Howell. Then I definitely would have gone safety Emmanuel McNeil-Warren at 58. And then at pick 90, I probably would have went Chris Bell because he was still there. So, there's a little bit of an overhang on these first 3 picks based on the fact that they passed up some talented players to take who they took or trade out of that pick. So to me, it adds a little bit more pressure to the situation. But you got in the 3rd round, they traded into the 3rd round. You got Romelo Height, who had a 3rd round grade from Dane Brugler. This is one of the picks that makes more sense to me, at least. Dane Brugler said there aren't many edge rushers with Height's slender size profile who find sustained NFL success, but his twitchy get-off and rush movements can be weaponized by the right defensive play caller. He projects as a sub-down designated pass rusher in the NFL. This is where, the 49ers had him in on a top 30 visit. This is where he was supposed to go. This is kind of where he was projected to go. And you might as well at this point. And again, a lot can happen between 70 and 90. So get yourself a pass rusher while there's one still on the board. KP, how'd you feel about this one?
Yeah. So I honestly watched more of the other 3rd rounder. So I really didn't get it. I only watched like a game of his yesterday, but you could really see why they drafted him. So I was looking at some of his stats and like the pressure percentage, it's real and it ties into a lot of what he does. So the speed is real. He covers a lot of ground. That's what I do. When I'm watching guys, I want to see how much ground they cover in their first 3 to 4 steps. And if you kind of sync it up and time it up with his teammate on the other side who was drafted 2nd, there's a pretty stark difference and it favors Height. So he's going to win with speed. He's going to threaten the pocket. He's going to, in my mind, both of the defensive line picks today are just to get the opposite colored jersey to flash, just to get the quarterback spooked and ideally, hopefully, run into somebody else. But at the same time, they're both super athletes. And to me, that means you can run a bunch of different games. You can get them on the move. And that's what today's D-line, the games are today, is you're just trying to get these guys to cross the face of the offensive lineman and hopefully confuse them up front, which we've seen the 49ers offensive line struggle with pretty mightily, I would say. So that usually happens with athletes like Height, or because of athletes like Height, I should say. So I'm also a big proponent, I think I said this yesterday, of just take guys from good defenses, not just good defenses. I would say select guys from like the top defenses, and you know that they're going to know how to play the game. You know that you're going to get great effort. You know that they understand what it takes to be top defenses. And Texas Tech, probably the best defense in college football last season. If it wasn't, it was Oklahoma. So I understand where they're coming from with Height. And they needed to replace Huff because they needed a speed guy. Didn't have a speed guy. Really got a bunch of big tweeners. So he's a good complement to what's already on the roster, I would say.
Yep. Tweeted this out yesterday. Romelo Height was a PFF darling when it came to getting after the quarterback. He had an overall grade of 92.5, a pass rush grade of 92.6, a true pass set grade of 91.2, and a pass rush win rate of 21.8%. All of those are maxed out in the Blues elite grades. So if there's one thing you want him doing, you don't want him setting the edge. You don't want him holding it down on first and second down necessarily. You want him getting after the quarterback, and you want him making
what
life.
He's not going to have to do those things.
That'll be Michael Williams on those downs. But I like the idea that even if he doesn't get there, even if the sacks aren't his, even if the pressures aren't his, he's running the arc, he's threatening with speed, he's causing that left tackle to kick out just a little bit further, create a little bit more space inside. And guys like Michael Williams, who's kicked inside at this point, Osa Odigizua, or somebody like CJ West or Alfred Collins, or even the guy they drafted in the 4th round that we're going to get to. And obviously Nick Bosa, just give the quarterback less space to work with. Give those guys a chance to get some interior pressure. So you can really, really easily see how Romelo Height fits into things. This is one of the picks in this draft class that makes sense. Didn't surprise anybody. It was expected. He came in on a top 30 visit. KP, anything else on Noel Romelo?
I don't know if you saw what Kyle Shanahan said about him, but he said we have a hair on fire grade, and he was at the top of it. And just the style that he did, he was just basically talking about a hair on fire. Just chasing to the ball. He also said when you're done with the tape and you get to like the body and stuff, he's somewhat of a tweener, like someone say Arvell Reese. So there are a lot of varieties, interesting word, you can do with him. Raheem has a ton of experience doing that. We see how he does. We're going to see how he uses him. He might play on the line he played a lot on the line of scrimmage in college, but you can also drop him. You can use him in a linebacker role. So I think that linebacker role is interesting. I think what Shanahan means by that is you can have Height be the guy where now you walk him up as a linebacker, as a blitzer over the center, and now you have a mismatch like what teams or what they were doing with Micah Parsons. So I think that movement idea does make a ton of sense as well.
And it's almost like you're keeping three linebackers on the field, and one of them drops down. Now you're in a five-man front in a way, and Romelo Height is athletic enough that if based on what the play is, he can't rush or he has to drop back or they change the call, he can hang with that. And Jalen Walker last year, obviously a high first-round prospect, not nowhere in the same ballpark, but the same mold, same type of player. Maybe a little bit closer to James Pierce on the field, not off. So that one makes sense. Did you? I think you said just a little bit ago that you did spend some time watching running back Kaylin Black, their next pick.
I did, yeah, I did. So that's pretty much what I did last night, and he is what. So running back coaches in college, I'm trying to figure out how to phrase this. He's a ball school wall kind of guy. Like he's 100, everything he does, like 100%. He holds the guy, like foot, pedal to the metal, pedal to the floor, holds the turbo. Everything is 100 miles an hour all the time. In pass pro, that works out really well until he goes against somebody with nuance, and then it kind of bites him. because they'll just use that momentum against him. I think as a runner, there are times when him going 100 miles an hour is perfect because he's able to turn in what could be a negative game. For example, there are a couple opportunities or a couple exposures where Indiana didn't have a guy blocked, and he was able to use his speed, which he's 4.45, and some of his jumps were.
He ran a 4.45.
Yeah, at Indiana's Pro Day, he ran a 4.45. And honestly, if you watch him, you can kind of see the speed, or not kind of, I should say. You can for sure see the speed. His jumps were pretty impressive too, and he does play that fast, I would say. That's why I'm
funny
kind
too,
of,
because he's got kind of a small stride, so it's like
for sure.
It's like his RPMs are just moving.
I wish I don't have it in front of me, but his Pro Day results were pretty impressive. But there were times where that speed, that full on turbo would help him. But there are also times where I feel like if he just let the play develop a tick longer. So the phrase that I was going to say is college coaches would always say, slow to fast through. That's what our running back coach would say.
Yeah.
And
a little bit of patience.
Yeah, that just let the big guys in front of you do their jobs. And then once you see a crease, once you see a hole, that's when you turn on the jets. But he has those jets going the entire time. And there are times where he misses holes when he shouldn't. But he also had a ton of plays where he's running through arm tackles because he's already at top speed. And that top speed led to quite a bit of long runs. So he legitimately had, I think, 41% of his carries were at least 15 yards, which is kind of nuts.
You want me to read his I think it says combine stats on Dave Brugler's Beast. He did 20 bench press 225 27 times. He still had a 71 3/4 inch wingspan, 1.53 10-yard split, 4.45 40-yard dash, a 37.5-inch vertical, 10.5-inch broad jump, and a 4.55 short shuttle. I don't know where that compares.
Yeah, short shuttle's that's not a good time, short shuttle wise, but all the other numbers are pretty solid. I think they're going to run him into the ground. That's like after watching him last night, because everything is 100 miles an hour. I think they're just going to use this rookie contract. So the idea is you're probably realistically, you're going to need 2 running backs outside of Christian McCaffrey next year, because the odds of him getting hurt, and this is no slight, this is just history telling us.
This is inevitable. We talked about it.
Yeah, it's going to happen. So it's not, I didn't look at this pick as a replacement for James. I looked at it as like a supplement to James, because you're probably going to need a 1-2 punch, and they're unsure if James can be that pass protecting back, and Black has some experience doing that. He's a really good athlete. He can probably also cover kicks, just with his speed. So they're going to be able to use him as a rookie. I don't think he's going to overtake James though. I think James has, I don't want to say like a higher upside. I just think he has a better feel as a runner, whereas Black is almost your change of pace back, and he can hit the big play.
Apparently, Ian Rappaport did tweet about Brandon Ayuk, but it's not news whatsoever. Commanders have significant interest in Ayuk. They don't want to trade for him because they believe the 49ers will eventually release him, and the 49ers prefer to trade him. That's the whole thing. So
thanks, Rapp.
Yep. New news for sure. The other thing I found interesting too is I saw a clip of him. Was he at the Senior Bowl?
I'm glad you said that, because I was going to say that too. So he
ran a route that just absolute dusted somebody.
So I was just going to say the fact that he was there, because they played the week before, and they didn't just play like some game the week before. It was the Natty.
and then he goes to the Senior Bowl the next week.
So that tells you about his competitive spirit right there. I'm sure Lynch fell in love with that when he interviewed him at the Senior Bowl.
I saw now those reps are tough. I'm assuming he's going up against a linebacker. I've always felt like the one-on-one reps between a running back and a linebacker is tough, because the linebacker just has to sit there at 5 yards and let the dude just come after him. But Kaylin Black gave him a little shimmy and ran like an out to the right and just left the dude. Like he was maybe 4 or 5 yards behind him, even though he's only ran 4 or 5 yards. And what I also noticed too was when he was at James Madison for the past 2 years. And the other thing that says a lot about him as football character is Kurt Cignetti brought him to Indiana. Like he wanted him to come with him. But while he was at James Madison, he had 27 catches for 254 yards and 4 touchdowns. So, when I saw 4 catches last year and 4 catches this year, I was like, oh boy. But he was doing it before that. So, and then I saw that route that he did at the Senior Bowl. So that gives me a little confidence that he can have an impact in the pass game. You know, you're not going to get him doing Christian McCaffrey things, but at least you can call a pass play in which he runs out and runs a route. But obviously one of the biggest reaches of the draft, but plus 90 big board ranking. They got him at 90. The big board ranking was 180. That's what people are going to talk about. But at the same time, again, the
guys that I liked, Emmett Johnson went in the 5th round.
Right. And I thought at one point he wouldn't even get close. So, and guys, Emmanuel Pregnon went like 88. It's like obviously there are plenty of other picks, and again, this is a whole podcast in and of itself. There are plenty of other picks where it went the other way. Like, okay, well, why did this guy that the consensus thought was so great? Why did he fall that far? Why did Emmanuel McNear-Warren go at pick 58 instead of 25? So there are discrepancies both ways. Next pick, another pick that I actually really liked from this draft class. What number was he taken? Oh, I clicked out of it. But
107?
Grayson Halton. Yeah, and this is the pick that they got from the trade back from 58 to 70, correct?
Yes.
And to me, when I saw Grayson Halton, just measurables, 6'2", almost 6'3", 293 pounds. At his pro day, he was 300 pounds, 10-inch hands, 31-inch arms, shorter arms, but managed at 6'3", 300 pounds, ran a 4.82 40-yard dash.
95th percentile.
Kind of felt to me like a rotational player that gives you a similar impact as to what Osa Odigizua does. Why can't I not remember him? Who's the little tiny defensive lineman that could only really disrupt the pocket? He's not there anymore. He just left this year, but he'd been there for 4 years.
Like Kevin Givens.
There you go. That's what I was looking for.
That's what I thought too.
So to me, it's like the 49ers wanted somebody, CJ West, Alfred Collins, similar players in the way they win and how they hold up. The 49ers didn't have any other defensive lineman that was remotely like Osa Odigizua. Grayson Halton gives you something like that. A guy that's not necessarily going to hold up against the run as well, but he's going to really give you a disruptive force on the interior and somebody that can spell Osa Odigizua on some snaps and still have some type of disruption effect. What do you think? Did you get a chance to watch him at all?
I did, yeah. I had some notes on him. When did I watch him? That's another thing. I don't want to seem like I'm just I came up with February 23rd of this year. I watched him against
putting in that work.
And watched him against Michigan, watched him against the Vols. So I got 2 games on him. And I don't know if you saw this or not, but he had the highest pressure percentage of any D tackle in this class. And
really?
He also had the highest true pressure, quick pressure. So he was number 1 in all of those. I was talking to one of my coworkers on this, and he said, like, the team that he covers, like he thought he was going to be in the running for the pick at the end of the 2nd round, which I thought was kind of interesting.
He was ranked 70th on PFF's big board, and the 49ers got him at 107. So where's the celebration? If we're going to be outraged about the reaches, you better be celebrating in the streets over this one. But I'm just being facetious.
So my coworker said I would have considered him at 52. He's so explosive. His 3-cone has to be fake. I don't know how he ran that. You can see when you watch him, he does cover a ton of ground. And like, that's when we're mentioning like vertical jump and broad jump, like that's how you can kind of quantify those, is the ground that they're covering. So Halton has a 98th percentile vertical jump. He has a 92nd percentile broad jump. And a lot of his pressures are coming on just those games that I mentioned, or just being quicker than the guy in front of him. So that disruption, that again, just getting a quarterback to move off his spot, getting a quarterback to flash or make him think that you are going to be a nuisance. The thing that I did have, like in a negative sense, I guess, is like he just didn't hold up against the run, which is kind of counterintuitive. You would think most guys who have great jump numbers are good against the run because they can anchor, because they can sit down and they won't get moved. But that wasn't him. I saw him get blown off the ball a couple of times, but you're not going to put him in a position to do that because you have Alfred Collins, because you have CJ West. So you have a couple of D tackles who were stout against the run as rookies, so you only would think that would get better. The stronger they get, the more that they play in the NFL. So Halton can be your designated pass rusher. So you don't have to, I don't want to say waste Collins and West on passing downs, but you can kind of give them a breather. So you can have specific roles for specific players. And when you do that, when the 49ers have done that, they were at their best. So I think it makes sense to have Halton in a role like that. It doesn't have to be, 50, 60% of the snaps. You can just play 30% of the snaps and still maximize. You can still be able to maximize his usage in that role.
It wouldn't surprise me if this was the best pick of the class. He has that. It takes a lot. It's not like he's not fighting an uphill battle, but I mean, the 49ers just traded for a guy that makes $20 million a year that wins in a very similar way. Oso Odighizuwa, he's not bad against the run, but you look
at their best pick of the class is going to be that player you just talked about.
Right. Don't forget about that one. Looking at his PFF now that I haven't looked at yet, pass rush grade a 76.9. That's in the blue. His run defense grade is still an 86.9, which is well into the blue. Yeah. His true pass set, and this is just PFF. Obviously, they've got their own opinions. True pass set, pass rush grades, a 72.9. That's still in the blue. Pass rush win rate of 10.4%. That's in the blue. And his run stop rate at 10.2% is in the blue. So he's a well-rounded. He had 5 quarterback sacks, 3 hits, and 22 hurries as an interior defensive lineman. So it was great value. It was a great fit. I figured the 49ers were going to hit a defensive lineman during this draft. Caleb Proctor came off the board just a few picks before the 49ers, and he's an even more Osa Odighizuwa type player. So it didn't surprise me that a couple picks later, the 49ers got who they felt was like the best interior pass rusher of the class. Anything more on Halton there?
No, just he'll be a good role player for what the 49ers need him to be. I think he's coming into a good situation.
Yeah, I do too. He's not going to be asked to do too much, and he'll be able to learn behind a guy that wins in a similar style. Next, I need to get my draft class back up here. What pick did they take? Oh, okay. At pick 127 in the 4th round, they got tackle, guard, maybe center, Carver Willis out of Washington, the first of 2 consecutive Washington players. Definitely in the land of I know nothing about this player. Dane's takeaway was Willis at his best ceiling and finishing in the run game, but his ability to stay on an NFL field will depend on how he protects his edges and anchors in pass protection. He projects as a backup swing lineman with the upside to be more. I do remember looking at his PFF stuff. Really, really, really good against, really not against the run, as a run blocker, not so much so as a pass protector. So, I mean, I doubt he plays tackle. He's only got 32 and a half inch arms. Everything I've seen says he's going to project as a guard. And I saw Matt Barrow's tweet that there was even a chance that he could play center. So maybe the 49ers feel like they may have gotten some depth at center, somebody that could be a future starting center. Who knows at this point? Did you take anything away from that pick?
I thought it was. So we talked about it yesterday. Jake Brindle's contract is up. So when Barrow said he had considered center, maybe they're looking at him there. So I don't know anything about the player. I'm not going to pretend to. He could walk right by me and I would have no idea who Carver Willis is. Still, though, with that said, the 49ers have told us multiple times that they are not going to invest early on in offensive linemen. That's just not how this team prioritizes that position. So that tells me he's probably not a tackle. But they're probably going to, let him, whether it's competing at left guard, whether he's a swing interior lineman, and they're only going to carry one backup. It probably pushes Nick Zakelj, right? Like those guys
right
off the roster. And I think it kind of resets the depth chart in that sense. And maybe down the line, maybe he works out or he proves that he can play this season. So I don't know. I'm interested. I'll have a stronger opinion on him once I do watch him.
Of course.
But based on where the depth chart looks right now, he's going to push the Nick Zakells, the Connor Colbys. I know they talked about Colby yesterday and how he started. No, he was a 7th rounder, and he looked like he was a 7th rounder.
He looked like he was a 7th rounder. Yeah, he's not somebody you want to be leaning on.
I would imagine Willis pushes those two.
Interesting note from Dane Brugler. He said he lead by example type NFL scout. There were mixed reviews at K-State. His overconfidence rubbed some the wrong way, but the kid grew up and was considered a leader at Washington. Strains and finishes with a salty play demeanor. Fluid adjustments in space when reacting to wide rushers. Plays wide and pass sets with strength in his hands. Hips to lose slowly. So yeah, interesting. I'm trying to look through the. He had a torn right MCL in last year in September of 2025, and it only sidelined him for 3 games. Screw it. Let's roll.
Football.
Tackle only in college, unproven inside at center or guard. So we'll see where that goes. So the second Washington player, definitely on the all name NFL team, Washington cornerback Ephesians Pryock. Now I wish I would have. I forgot about it. I wish I would have gone back and watched it. Something the mic. There's a podcast by Sam Monson, 2 former PFF guys. Check the mic, I think it's called. And they did a video. I think that was them that did the video. Maybe it was Underdog. I can't remember who did it. I think it was Check the Mic. They did a video where they had like 40 or 50 NFL draft analysts and NFL analysts just say who their favorite NFL draft prospect was. I'd have to go back and find it, but one of their favorite players was Ephesians Pryock. Wow. And that's where I heard the name. I was like, man, there's somebody named Ephesians Pryock. I mean, first of all, that's a biblical name, so you know he's not playing around. But Dane Brugler gave him a 4th or 5th round grade. He's an interesting kind of a throwback to the corners that the 49ers used to be interested in. 6'3" and 3/8, 200 pounds, 33 1/8 arms, 80.5-inch wingspan. Ran a 4.45 40. This is kind of like the old school, cover 3 corner where he's just, it's just him. Dane said Pryock has rare physical traits that are hard to find at the position. Although he's still learning how to maximize those tools in coverage, he will appeal to both press heavy and zone based schemes as a developmental dart throw. And then his even shorter little synopsis is boasts impressive physical traits, but needs to learn how to apply them in coverage. Did you get a chance to watch any Ephesians Pryock?
Have not. I just went to his mock draftable and I saw that one of his comps were Ahkello Witherspoon.
Doesn't he take up most of the graph?
Yeah, he does. When you're that size and you have that kind of arm length and you run in the 4.4s, teams are gonna gravitate toward you. So I was looking at some of his stats. So he was targeted. He had 3 years basically of starting experience, and he was targeted over 50 times in each of those. So he was targeted 49, 55, and 56 times, and he allowed a completion percentage of under 50% in each 3 seasons. So I thought that was interesting. In this past season, he had double-digit breakups, and Sports Info Solutions had him dropping 3 interceptions and having 1. So he could have had 4 and could have had basically 14 on-ball plays, which I thought was kind of fascinating. So at the very worst, right, you're getting a guy who just cover kicks like another Darrell Luter, who ideally would run out of the way when the ball hits him, or
don't do it.
or he grows into somebody you can use, right? And that you can be that long, lanky, cover 6 kind of corner who is able to make plays, but near the line of scrimmage, but can also turn and run on vertical routes. So I'm going to watch him. I'm interested to see what he did at Washington, how he was used at Washington. So, but as far as like seeing him play, I have no idea. I could not tell you. Like again, he could have just walked by me, and I have no idea who that is.
Well, it was him. What was interesting, it was him and Takario Davis, who were both like 6'4", and they just both went, like, I saw videos of them both coming off the field. Well, let me make sure I do that right there. I'm just making sure we haven't had a comment in a while, and I'm just making sure the comments aren't messed up again. But I didn't have the kids thing selected again this time, so hopefully not. But
people insane.
But Washington had 2 corners that were both like 6'4", 200 pounds. It was cool seeing him walk off the field. I mean, he's a physical player. He's like tall, skinny, but he still looks relatively well built. I'll be interested to see what the 49ers have planned for him. I saw some people mentioning a possible move to safety, and if he, as a coverage guy, I'm not, because he is good against the run. He did play pretty physical. He seemed like he had a decent knack for it in the real short clips I saw. He's got a good run defense, an elite run defense grade from PFF, 82.9. PFF is attributing 5 touchdowns to him. Does that mean he had 5 pick sixes? Where do those 5 touchdowns come from?
Jesus.
There's no way he had 5 pick sixes, right? And then he had 2 touchdowns in 24, unless TD means something else in these cornerback stats. But where do those 5 touchdowns come from?
There's no way he's lasting this long if he has 5 touchdowns.
5 pick sixes. We got to get this guy. 8 of them in his career. I don't know what that is referring to.
We would have heard about that.
Right. I don't know what that is referring to. That's odd. I wonder where it comes from. Maybe it's allowed 5 touchdowns. Now it's sad. Now it's like, oh dang. No 5 pick sixes. But yeah, that'll be interesting. I'm interested. I know interesting is the word of the day for me. Just how they use him. He's so much different than what they've had, and this feels like a Raheem Morris is like, I could use someone like this. Let me see what I can do with him. It kind of also feels like the 49ers trying to get a little bit of a Reek Woolen, like just to take in a late round, long, lanky corner and see what he can do in your defense. So that's interesting. Let's jump to the next one. This is an interesting one. I know you watched him a little bit. I think it's the biggest reach of the 49ers draft class. Jaden Duggar, linebacker, sort of. Jaden Duggar, this man is 6'5", 242 pounds, nearly 10-inch hands, 35-inch arms, an 84 3/8 inch wingspan, and he ran a 4.6 40. I don't even have any idea. This guy looks like a scarecrow playing football. Like, it is just a wild thing to see Jaden Duggar doing linebacker things. But how much of a chance did you get to watch Jaden Duggar, and what did you take from that?
Yeah, I mean, just a little bit. Obviously, you can see his frame. Like, he's 6'5", and he looks 6'5". So Louisiana Raging Cajuns, he was a first-team all-conference player last season. But he transferred from Georgetown, and at the All-Patriot League as a sophomore, he was playing a different position. So he's obviously didn't weigh as much. So back when he was weighing in the 220s, he was an all-conference safety. So that's kind of interesting that he could excel at 2 positions in college in 2 different conferences. Another guy that I talked to said their teams were considering him as a priority free agent. So this being one of the 49ers' final picks, they're going to make sure that they can get their hands on him now. So it's undoubtedly a reach. But again, like, you can see why they did that, right? Because ready to play, 4-year senior, has played a lot, has played on the line of scrimmage. They used him sometimes in that A gap as a blitzer, sometimes off the ball as a linebacker, sometimes he'd walk down on the line of scrimmage. So again, you're getting to see him play multiple different positions, be able to see him used in all kind of roles. So it's a lot easier to project when that's the case. I think realistically, we're talking about a guy who's going to make the roster by covering kicks. And again, like, he's going to be on a rookie contract next year after, like, Greenlaw and Gifford, probably Garrett Wallow, like, they're going to be gone. So that's where he's going to make his mark, is probably a couple years down the line.
Yeah. What did you like? Do you just see him sticking at linebacker, and he's just going to be the most awkwardly framed linebacker, a dude that makes Fred Warner look small and Fred Warner looks huge?
So I see the guy who walks down on the line of scrimmage, and that's why, right? Like, he has the length, the height. I'm not going to say he's going to be able to hold up against tackles, but he should be able to do that against tight ends. So if you're just playing him in that odd front, stand-up guy against tight ends, and he can rush the passer with that speed, but he can also turn and run being a safety, and whether he needs to guard a tight end on an out route or something like that. It looks like he's pretty comfortable doing that. So he's not Eman Wari, but it feels like after what the 49ers watched last year, they're trying to get that kind of player who can just really erase underneath throws and cover ground and just be a nuisance around the line of scrimmage with that kind of frame. And I would imagine that's what they're going to try to do. So I don't want to pigeonhole him into safety, linebacker, nickel, whatever he is, but he's going to play near the line of scrimmage.
Right. VN said he liked the Duggar pick. Dane's takeaway: Duggar is an ascending player with a blend of size and reactive athleticism worth developing on the back end of an NFL roster or practice squad. Interesting. And then Michael said, I am super intrigued by the Duggar. He seems like a freak athlete that's just going to be a weapon. And maybe that's the point. It's just think less about positions and more about him being just some type of a rover, a star type of linebacker that just kind of moves throughout the about the formation and put them where they need them. That to me, this and not Takario Davis, that was his teammate. Ephesians Pryock both seem like Raheem Morris. Like, how would I use this type of player? Type of picks.
Right.
And the last pick of this draft class is towards the back end of the 5th round is tackle Enrique Cruz Jr. out of Kansas. Dane Brugler gave him a 6th round grade. Seems like a very, very athletic tackle. Dane's takeaway said Cruz is still green in areas and learning how to use all of his tools in unison, but the encouraging play on his 2025 tape gives NFL teams optimism. He could be an interesting day 3 flyer for a team running a zone scheme. So, I mean, there are definitely worse positions you could go with your last pick of the draft. And the clips that NFL Network was showing of him looked like a really, really athletic tackle. It looked like he almost looked like a bigger tight end, kind of like a Joe Staley type of athlete. And we'll see where that goes from there. End of the 5th round pick. This could be somebody that the 49ers hope to just slide under their practice squad after training camp and continue to develop him type of thing. 6'5.5", 313 pounds, 10 1/4 inch hands, 33 3/4 inch arms, 82 3/4 inch wingspan. So he has the measurables, and he still kept his 40 time under 5 seconds too, 4.94. So, KP, did you get a chance to glance at him at all?
Did not, have no idea who this person is. For a second, I was looking at his background. I was like, okay, did he play with Pooney? And no, he transferred in. So, I don't have much. I saw Brandon Thorne, who's basically the online guru in the draft community or in football community. He gave him a 7th rounder. A lot of the same, just like a developmental guy. But he's very athletic. His 40 and jumps were like 90th percentile. So I think the baseline, right? You're hoping maybe he can develop into a spot starter if need be.
Yeah. So that's that is their draft class. Again, starting off the class, you've got wide receiver Deshawn Stribbling, defensive end Romelo Height, running back Kaylin Black, defensive tackle Grayson Halton, offensive guard Carver Willis, cornerback Ephesians Pryock, linebacker Jaden Duggar, and offensive guard or tackle Enrique Cruz Jr. I would say if I were to sum this up for me, it's hard for it's hard for me to sink my teeth into any part of this draft class in terms of the immediate impact it's going to have. Deshawn Stribbling, not necessarily a starter, might be one over time when some of these players drop off. We talked about it before they made that pick, man. Ricky Pearsall is struggling with injuries. Mike Evans everybody talks about that it's a 1-year deal, but it looks like it could easily be 2. Christian Kirk, 1-year deal. We have no idea what to expect of Jacob Cowing. We have no idea what to expect from Jordan Watkins yet. So
they don't either, or else they wouldn't have drafted him.
Right. So we don't know when Deshawn Stribbling is going to get on the field. Romelo Height has a pretty clear path. He should be their immediate speed rusher. Maybe he starts out behind Samo and then slowly starts to gain traction as far as more snaps per game. That one's a pretty clear fit.
As the season goes along, you're saying?
Right. Yeah, I would assume they wouldn't feel comfortable throwing him out there right away unless he just has a wild training camp. But
it could be just like what was it last year? Just the rookie DTs. So Kalia Davis and Jordan Elliott started for pretty much the first half of the season, and then as the season progressed, as Collins got more comfortable, then you start to see Collins take over as a starter. You start to see CJ West take over as a starter. So they can kind of roll in with height. Right.
And that was always, even if the 49ers would have went Cassius Howell with their first pick, that would still be, for the most part, a rotational pass rusher. That Cassius Howell taken with the first pick in the 2nd round would have still had the same role as Romelo Height taken at pick 70. So it's not like that's kind of like what that has to be if they're going with that speed rusher type. Then you got running back Kaylin Black, who comes in as, maybe they see Jordan James as the rotational piece with Christian McCaffrey, and Kaylin Black is like the backup to both of them.
Yes,
you know what I mean? I don't think that they.
Kyle said last year, I think it was at the NFL meetings, that Isaac Guerrero, the reason he didn't play is because he was only Christian McCaffrey's backup, and Christian didn't get hurt. So he said he was going to play if Christian would have went down. But the fact that he didn't, they had identified like Brian Robinson's role as Brian Robinson's role and McCaffrey the same. So I wonder if this year he talked about not using multiple running backs for the first time in his career last year. So this is why they took a running back early. And I would imagine, like you said, I think James is going to be more of the bell cow. It's a lot like the Hoosiers, where Hamby was like RB1, but Black would come in like on the third series or whatever. So it's probably going to be something like that.
Right. And yeah, Michael has a good point here. He's saying not even just our picks, but all around the league, it seems like the amount of reaches this year showed how little the league in general disliked this draft. There were a ton of reaches. The 49ers weren't, and the 49ers are never the only team reaching. It's just a constant thing. And there were a ton of players falling that weren't expected to fall. So, maybe the opinions just varied. We'll see. Time will tell.
I think that's a great point by Michael, just because if you're thinking about the way that this draft is talked about compared to the way next year's talked about, it makes more and more sense why the 49ers traded out. If you're thinking in terms of like how many true blue chip players were there, ESPN's Jordan Reed said he had 11 first round grades in this draft.
Oof.
Like, why are we getting so hell-bent over these picks in the second and the third, where most of these guys are being pushed up regardless because there are no good players? So I think it's being a little exaggerated. Again, based on what we read on big boards from other people, but in reality, I don't think there are really, the top end talent isn't there. So just identify a good player, identify if that player fits what you want to do. And you could tell that's what the 49ers did in this draft.
Well, and I'm on ESPN's kind of active big board right now. And just to put the inverse point out there, like Xavier Harris, defensive tackle out of Ole Miss, he was an overall rank of 63. He's still on the board. They're on pick, 217. Deion Burks, wide receiver out of Oklahoma, he was overall ranked 81. He's still on the board. Garrett Nussmeier, the quarterback out of LSU, he was 87th on ESPN's board.
QB2 for a lot of people, by the way.
Right. Dante Lawson, linebacker out of Alabama, 103. He's still on the board. Jack Andrews, who the 49ers brought to their local pro day, who I thought the 49ers might pick at some point. He's still on the board. Yeah, that could be somebody that the 49ers immediately bring as an undrafted free agent if he makes it through the round. Kansas State safety VJ Payne, who was a very popular pick in the 49ers mock draft Wonderland, 124 ranked. He's still on the board, It goes both ways. The 49ers are reaching for players that were supposed to be gone per the consensus are still on the board. So it's not, I don't know, maybe sometimes we freak out about it a little too much. Isaiah World out of Oregon, he's still on the board. There's a lot of names on here that gained a lot of traction throughout the season that are still just kind of sitting there. Let me see if one name is still on the board. Hold on, for a little self-serving. Eli Heidenreich, running back out of Navy, still there. Bring him in. Okay.
Your boy.
So, like I was saying, Deshawn Stribbling, rotational for now. Romelo Height, rotational, but that was always going to be that way with that position. Running back, Kaylin Black, backup, but the 49ers usually need a lot of running backs. Defensive tackle, Grayson Halton, rotational. Guard, Carver Willis, backup. Ephesians Pryock, backup. Linebacker, Jaden Duggar, I'm assuming a backup. I have no idea what's going to become of that guy. And then Enrique Cruz might not even make the roster. Definitely a backup, probably practice squad. So there's just very little in this draft class to sink your teeth in. When you think about the fact that somebody like, a Denzel Boston was available there. And, and again, Cassius House kind of iffy because that would mean that, he was going to be rotational anyways. But, or Emmanuel McNeil Warren was there at one point, who you would assume would immediately come in and be better than Jair Brown, at least would fill a different role. So I just felt like they didn't necessarily get any genuine starters from this draft class, but that changes fast, man. Injuries happen. The 49ers get injured. They practice next to a substation, which is ruining everything they've ever wanted. And that's sarcasm. Nobody get upset at me. And so it's just inevitable that these guys will see the field. That's just how it works out. But as of right now, it's just like, is there a single starter from this draft class? Not right now.
So
not right now.
There might not be, but will there be this time next year? Like, well, right. That's what the hope is, right? So
yeah, because you're supposed to give a draft class 3 years at least, before you start putting a grade on it.
This is the same team that is a year removed from the Super Bowl and just won a playoff game when they were supposedly rebuilding, right?
Well, and not rebuild. They were broken too. You know what
Sure.
I mean? Like so many guys were injured. Here's a question from Ryan. Would our first 4 picks have been available with our 4 fourth picks? Deshawn Stribbling, no. Romelo Height, no. Kaylin Black, probably. Grayson Halton, doubtful. That is a 4th round. You know what I mean? So
Right.
that was when they're at that point, you're in the 4th round. And from the sound of it, and they got him per the consensus big board. They got value out of him. He should have already been taken. But I don't think Deshawn Stribbling makes it. Even Dane Brugler said he's going top 65. It's just a matter of how high he goes. Obviously, the 49ers liked him. I don't think Romelo Height makes it to the 4th round. I think Kaylin Black probably would have. So, it's not. I think
Black would have too, unless NFL is really valuing just all of the things that Kirk Cinetti has done this past couple of years. So they're valuing the Indiana players.
How many Indiana players came off the board?
Oh, they were flying, it seemed like, for a second there.
Yeah, they got a lot. All right, man. That's the class. And now, more importantly, especially in 49ers land, they're going to start signing undrafted free agents. They're in the 7th round. They're already making calls, undoubtedly, about they're already making calls. In the 7th round, you're starting to call guys and saying, hey, if you don't get drafted, we want you here. And here's how much we're willing to pay you. The 49ers are undoubtedly already doing that. Let me see where we're at in the draft. We're in the 7th round, the very beginning of the 7th round. So we'll see where it goes from there. And then the 49ers will start to getting active with undrafted free agents, which they've been really good at. And don't count on an undrafted free agent running back coming in here and shaking things up, because that is what they do. Like Eli Heidenreich, speak it into existence, Robert. KP, any last thoughts on the draft class?
No, I think we knew that the 49ers were going to take wide receiver and edge. We knew that they were probably going to address offensive line and defensive line as well. They did all of the above. They got their DB. They got their linebacker. So they got more athletic. I think another thing that we mentioned just throughout the season was like their team speed sucked last season. There's no way around that. And they got much better.
Such an eloquent way to put that. And I honestly mean that. Like, it's just such a great way to put it. Their team speed sucked.
It's true. Like, I don't mean to talk down on them, but
no, it's true.
They were not fast on either side of the ball. And that's not what made the 49ers the 49ers. Like, when you watch 2019, 2021, 2022 on both sides of the ball, like, they were faster than everybody. 2023, I should say, on offense especially. So to be able to get fast guys again, to be able to inject athleticism on both sides of the ball, I think that's a pretty good draft. So I would look at it in those terms as well, not just so much the player versus the consensus, which is such a reductive way to go about this class.
I know. I went and found your tweet because it was funny. Your Deshawn Stribbling's tweet. There's no need to sugarcoat it. The 49ers wide receivers were dog shit blockers last year.
They were. I would say this to Kyle Shanahan. Like, hey, you guys.
He knows it. He knows it. He probably despised it. He was probably very, very angry.
If you I could put together a reel of McCaffrey having to shake DBs in the backfield, and whether it was, I don't want to just say the receivers, they were just staring at him, wondering, patting those chest, my bad. Like, that can't happen as a pro, man.
Right. Well, that does it, man. That's our breakdown of the draft class. We'll keep going with it. Things will get more detailed. We'll have more time to watch these guys. Things will become more clear, and we'll see what they go from here. Pay attention. Watch the final 7th round of the draft class. Maybe somebody throws the 49ers a 7th rounder for Brandon Ayuk, and they make one more pick, and me and KP have to get on here and create a new intro breaking down the 49ers 7th rounder. But appreciate everybody here hanging out in the chat. Make sure you're doing all that comment, subscribe stuff. We already hit 100 subscribers. That's cool. We just started this thing a couple days ago, flying up the draft boards. We'll be a day one pick before you know it. Trying to think if there's anything else we need to cover. I don't think so. KP, we good?
We are good.
All right, everybody. Again, I appreciate you. And if you're listening on iTunes or Spotify, don't forget to leave us a 5-star review. We would greatly, greatly, greatly appreciate it. Thank you for everybody hanging out in the chat. Thanks, Mike. Appreciate you. But hey, for another episode, we'll be back on here this week at some point. That's KP. I'm Rob. This is Striking Gold, and we're signing out.